What up? Hey, yo, I know it's been a really long time since we got to sit down and kick it and have one of these episodes right here, man. So, hey, yo, my bad, my apologies. Your boy's been busy, man. Your boy's been extremely busy, actually, but I appreciate y'all, especially if you're tuning in right now in the first couple days after dropping this thing, because I know it's been a hot minute since I've dropped anything, whether we're talking about, even not only just this podcast, we've taken a couple weeks off the Meltdown podcast as well. Llama's been sick. Your boy's been busy, man. I appreciate y'all kicking it through. I figured I'd probably start this thing off kind of talking about where I've been just a little bit. You know what I mean? It's not like your boy's falling off the face of the earth or nothing. Your boy's just been busy, man. We kind of talked about during the last episode. I guess we'll just call that episodes 1 through 8, I guess maybe season 0, like the launch season of, the OnCue Esports podcast. We're going to get back into this thing, get into the swing of things. I've actually got quite a few things in mind as far as some other ways to spice things up here in the upcoming weeks. But, man, over the course of the last couple months, TEC, the high school league that I've been working up here in Pennsylvania, it's been keeping me busy, man. It's been keeping me plenty busy. Not only doing like their casting Monday through Thursdays, also doing a lot of their weekly content as well, doing like top plays of the week across a couple of titles, doing kind of breakdowns as far as all the weekly action and stuff like that as well. So, my apologies as far as for that. But that wasn't the only thing keeping me busy. Throughout the course of the RLCS season in split number 2, your boy was casting every single weekend, whether it was doing the main broadcast once again over in SSA, or even doing the Swiss stages for OCE when it came to the Quick Trip Pioneers, doing those each and every Thursday night, rolling on into Friday. And then this last month's been busy, man. We had the TEC Spring Championship LAN up by the Pittsburgh way. We had the PIEA, so Pennsylvania Interscholastic Esports Association Championship LAN. That was up north of like Philly, like past Philly, up on the other side of the state. We also had, my parents visiting in town. Like I said, I was working RLCS. We also somehow figured out how to move as well. And then I just got back from MidwestFest last weekend, man. So it's been a heck of a last month for sure, but especially last couple of months. So we're gonna get back into the swing of things, not just with the podcast, but also the stream, watch parties, you name it, man. But, with all that, the world of esports, it hasn't stopped. We've had our first VCT Pacific champion. We've gotten the RLCS field set for LANdon. There's a scenario where Carmine Corp might not be qualifying for Worlds, right? Apex split number 2 is underway for ALGS. And everybody, everybody is picking up their last rosters for the Esports World Cup coming up. So let's go ahead and get down and do what it do. And I figured, let's go ahead and start off talking about the Esports World Cup, because we're seeing so many rosters getting picked up right now. Of course, it all kind of started off with the Falcons picking up their super team in the ALGS, or I should just say for the Apex in general, but they are competing in the ALGS as well. You've got Hal, you've got Jen Burton, you've got Zero, the super team. They're going to win not just 1, not 2, not 3. Nah, but you know what I'm saying, man. Kind of the super team like we saw way back in the day with the Heatles. The team's been looking good so far during the ALGS split number 2. Of course, we're not quite yet halfway there, so I'm going to be kind of curious to see how the rest of the split does unfold. But also with the Esports World Cup, man, we saw that the Esports award show is now going to be part of the Esports World Cup. We've seen big names like Golden Boy and more who are already saying that they are not going to be taking place in the Esports award show this year. And, look, I know I'm going to come off maybe insensitive in asking this, so I want y'all to make sure that you're hanging with me and kind of hearing me out on this one, right? But are we overreacting to this whole Esports World Cup situation? And look, I know maybe it's the wrong month to be asking this question. I get it. There's a lot of things that I think we have a lot of different views than, say, the average person from the region, especially when we talk about the government over there as well, right? I'm not trying to turn this into a political debate. We're not going to talk about it too much, but I do think that there are some concerns when we talk about the Esports World Cup. But in a time where literally no one is investing in esports, should we maybe at least be a little open to it? Maybe not the views of what everyone is expecting is actually from the views of the top of the Esports World Cup and their whole committee and things like that, right? Maybe they really are trying to bring the world together. We're seeing a lot of money getting invested into the esports industry in the region. I think it's at least worth keeping an open mind to. Definitely understand a lot of the hesitation and a lot of the unapproving comments and the people who have their concerns about everything getting moved over there. I know I definitely do as well. But again, kind of looking back at where the industry has kind of come to over the course of, really the last couple of years. It's not like we're playing with funny money. anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like this is an FTX situation where everything can come crashing down. I do have some concerns as far as on the side of sports washing and things like that. But I don't know if we have anything that can necessarily say for sure that everything isn't up on the up and up right now as far as the Esports World Cup. You know what I'm saying? I would definitely love to get your guys' opinion. Let me know down in the comments below if you're watching this thing over on YouTube or anywhere else as far as the video platforms. Also, feel free to let me know down the feedback as far as over on the voice and the vocal programs as well for podcasts as well. You know what I mean? But the reason that I wanted to bring it up, man, and we saw, I believe it was Team Liquid make a statement not too long ago, and I think they hit a lot of big points in, man. Like, if you are an esports org, especially in a time right now where, I mean, you don't have as many opportunities as you did, 3-4 years ago when the COVID bubble was very, very big and growing, right? Look at the 2 months that the Esports World Cup is going on, and pretty well all of the big leagues across the globe kind of come on hold, right? There's that gap between Major 2 and championships for RLCS. You could even say the same thing for ALGS as far as where, the Esports World Cup is supposed to be fitting in. It just feels like to me, if you are a big org, you should probably be trying to find some way to get involved in this. Otherwise, you are kind of missing out on a promotion and marketing opportunity. And I know that sounds like really, really shitty to say. I get it. I understand it, right? But I think when we look at it logistically, it just makes sense for these orgs to be trying to get involved, trying to put their name out there, especially on a stage that is as grand as the Esports World Cup. I mean, we didn't hear all these complaints and everything when it was just called Gamers 8 and it was basically the same format last year, right? Only complaints that we started getting was when all of a sudden it's the Esports World Cup. Then, of course, also with the Esports Award Show getting handed over there. And I mean, with the way that the government over there has handled journalism in the past, I can definitely understand like why there's that concern. But again, we don't kind of know as far as how much their involvement is in everything. I mean, we can probably assume quite a bit. But again, I just think when you read the room and you kind of look around and you realize no one's investing, you got to understand, especially where the business side of esports is coming from, by getting everyone involved in the World Cup. There's obviously a lot of money getting thrown around. You're seeing all of these orgs that are now picking up rosters that they normally otherwise probably wouldn't have. I just don't think that it's all negative. Again, definitely feel free to let me know down in those comments below. Really want to know your guys' thoughts. We're going to talk more about the Esports World Cup in the coming weeks as I've gotten more time to kind of dig in and pick up on things. Like I said, I've had an extremely, extremely busy last month with traveling, with getting through the high school leagues and stuff like that. But just kind of want to know, where you guys' heads at as far as the viewers and listeners. All right. As far as kind of kicking around some of our other, the big esports leagues that we always keep in track of over here on the OnCue Esports podcast. Let's talk about Apex, since that currently has like the most going on, right? I mean, we're seeing more and more roster moves every day happens when like you're trying to compete against a super team that is Team Falcons right now, right? But I think also just because so much is changing when you have the POI drafts, which is putting a lot more stress as far as onto the IGLs. Now coaches being more important than ever. When you see big shifts in the landscape, usually it means big shifts of people moving in and out. So can't be too surprised really when we talk about the amount of changes that we have seen in rosters thus far in the offseason or even heading into split number 2. I mean, we're 2 weeks in. We're still seeing changes up until this day. I mean, just this week we had MT stepping down from the Moist active roster, which means you're going to be seeing it's Timmy from DSG, which I don't know if this starts to spell the end of DSG. It's kind of interesting because Designful just a couple of weeks ago was trialing with TSM, decided to step away from the TSM trial to try and run it back with the DSG boys just for this thing to pop up. Now, you do got to say, when you look at kind of Moist, how everything works there, the fact that Timmy's going to be able to take a little bit bigger of a paycheck there as well with some things changing in his life, you can definitely understand that being a really good choice. I mean, also you get the chance to play with Waltzy and Guild, who at one point were considered like 2 of the top 5 controller players in the world. I would venture to say that they probably still are right now when it comes to that. I think this Moist team is going to be able to make some noise, and they're going to need to, because Moist has not had a great start to the ALGS Split 2. Currently, I mean, even under the relegation line, I think they're sitting like 25th or something like that. So they need to start making some big moves. Wouldn't be surprised to see them absolutely pop off this weekend. And again, you combine it's Timmy with Waltzy as well as with Guild. I think this team has a lot, like immense potential. It sucks as far as seeing the end of the story of DSG. I mean, a team that was one fight away on multiple occasions at the last 2 LANs from being the champion, right? I mean, a team that was literally right there, but you can't help but wonder as far as maybe the intensity from Designful and Enemy, maybe not necessarily mixing with its Timmy, right? Who is a player who is mostly competing just for the fact that he has the passion to compete. You know, he's already got the money from the content creation. He doesn't need any extra earnings or anything like that. He's got enough street cred in the esports industry. It just seems like Moist more than likely going to be a better fit for him. And also got to remember that Timmy stepping away from another creator friend as far as from Disguised and then joining another creator org in Moist. So I'm going to be really intrigued to see what Moist does in the upcoming weeks. I'm also going to be really intrigued to see what Native Gaming does. They dropped McLovin. McLovin joining his previous team just because of what they were saying. It was just kind of like a chemistry misfit. So Snipedown stepping in with RKN as well as with Rambo. I think that team is going to be absolutely amazing. They are also another team that's going to have to make some move, but I feel like for them, it's a big vibes thing. They're all big vibey players, especially when I think about like Snipedown, when I think about Ramboski's teams that in the past, when they are on them, if the vibes are high, they're playing very, very well. Hopefully the two of them, their like energy can kind of bounce off of one another and keep those vibes high for the team. Because I do think that this team is another one of those squads that has a lot of potential. Although I guess you could really say that about a bunch of rosters over in North America when it comes to NA from North America for ALGS. I mean, it's been a crazy split so far, not just in NA. I mean, we've seen Legends Gaming getting picked up for the Esports World Cup by Twisted Minds. However, if you're a Legends Gaming fan, don't be worried. They are still under the banner for the rest of ALGS. This is just more of a signing directly for the Esports World Cup, which makes sense. Again, Twisted Minds, one of those teams that is involved in the Esports World Cup, looking to try and acquire some big rosters. I think that this Legends Gaming roster, really good for them and kind of helps fit the mold just a little bit more than if they would have picked up like an NA team like we saw from Team Falcons, right? But this week's been crazy, man. You had 07 getting picked up by Ninjas in Pajamas. Guild picked up the old Serenity roster. FaZe picked up the Made in Heaven crew. I mean, even KCP is back as well, man. They picked up the tripods this past week here as well. So we've been seeing a bunch of changes that should be pretty well starting to come to a little bit of a cool down here. At least I feel like kind of looking at the lay of the land. Obviously, roster lock coming up here again, as well as just it's kind of like the middle of the season after this weekend. So a lot of changes has happened, but I do feel like we're going to start seeing a little bit of that consistency starting to pop back into things. But, you know, I'm going to try and be tuning back into ALGS. I know we weren't really able to stay up on top of watch parties the last couple of weeks, really last couple of months or last couple of weeks of at least Split 1, just because I was getting so busy with TEC. We're going to start that back up this weekend. Don't know if I'm going to be able to watch much of APAC North tonight when we get done with this, just because I am going to be watching the unofficial 2v2 tournament for RLCS, and that's definitely going to be taking precedent. But tomorrow we got EU and NA. We've got APAC overnight, then EU, NA again on Sunday. We'll be definitely tuning in to as much of that as possible. So if you guys are definitely looking for a place to keep up with that, we'll probably be watching over on Twitch as well as YouTube. May even pop live up over on the Tiki-Tac. Trying to get back into the swing of things here. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of getting into the swing of things, first time through and y'all loving the energy, do me a favor, man. Hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on. Not only do we do podcastings over here talking esports, we get back into the swing of things as far as some storytelling when it comes to esports content overall. But we do cover a couple of different titles. You know, we cover ALGS. The other big one that I really love to talk about a lot is RLCS. Now, I'm not going to talk too much RLCS this weekend. You know, next week we'll do pick'ems as far as at least for round number 1. Maybe we'll do our pick'ems after that. I don't know. Maybe we'll just do that as our own video. I'm not really sure. Maybe both. Who knows? But I do know there are a few things that I do kind of want to talk about heading into the week, heading into RLCS Split 2 LAN, all right? I do got a question as far as for the Karmine Corp fans, and I guess not even just for the Karmine Corp fans, but for people or fans of RLCS in general. I'm kind of curious. You know, we've had talks in the past on the podcast about how I never really thought that the format was to blame for things, but for a team like Karmine Corp, who has been as dominant as they were in Split 2, although maybe having a fall off, or sorry, as dominant as they were in Split 1, having a fall off the way that they did in Split 2, but not only missing Split 2 major, but now potentially not even making it to Worlds. And I know there's always this big gripe because like Karmine Corp does have a very big fan base, but I also don't think that because an org has a big fan base, all of a sudden their road to like a major or anything should be that much easier. I think that we can all agree that the current format when it comes to the qualifiers, although it does cause a little bit of turbulence along the way, I think it makes for a great spectator experience, right? You can see these upsets. You see your favorite team playing all the time instead of them just waiting until top 16 like we have in the past. And also, I mean, you get upsets, right? We have seen Karmine Corp lose twice to a team that still has found trouble when it comes to like finding those top 4 placements, but they've beaten Karmine Corp twice. There is something that is not working. And if you are supposed to be the best in the world, or at least a top 4 team in your region, I do feel like you should be able to make the adjustments to beat teams like that. You are a pro. You're supposed to be one of the best of the best. And especially when we're talking about EU, we can say, hey, yeah, the region is thicker. That's why teams are going over to SSA to try and take their regional spot. Look, I get it. There are arguments, but if you were supposed to be a Karmine Corp, a team that literally almost just had a perfect split, you can't be falling to teams that are struggling to get past, past the Swiss stage. You know what I mean? You just can't be having that, especially when you have a roster that's as loaded as you do, especially when you have a coach that's as talented as you do. We can't blame the format here. Unless I'm wrong. Maybe if you guys think I'm wrong, feel free to let me know down in those comments below. But I feel like if Karmine Corp really are those dudes, right? I feel like they should be able to get through qualifications and at least put themselves in Swiss. A couple of times that they haven't, that's been what's really cost them on the points. That's why they're not going to major number 2. That's why they might not be going to Worlds. Look, let's just call it for what it is, right? But when we talk about some other teams that aren't going to be at major number 2, I mentioned that I did the Swiss stages for the Pioneers over for split number 2 over in OCE. We saw an interesting change heading into qualifier number 6. They replaced Fiber with their coach Mock on the starting lineup. And I think a lot of people had their questions about that, but Mock did seem to kind of fit with Anthus as well as Super Lucky just a little bit better. I feel like it was more of a chemistry fit and more of a chemistry change. I feel like you have to watch the teams or watch the games to really kind of get a feel for what I'm talking about. They just seemed like it was poetry in motion at times. The ball movement was amazing. The third coverage as far as defense rotation was always on point. It felt like it was the right fit, I think, personally. I know that they talked about on the Chalkedcast podcast not too long ago. They felt like it was more of a move. It was just like a buddy-buddy sort of move. And I just don't think that was necessarily the case. I mean, they looked really, really dominant against the Chiefs where they needed to in the final qualifiers. Just unfortunately, no one has been able to take down Power. They truly are the super team over in OCE. Maybe they took a little too long to make the move. I'm not exactly sure. Again, guys, feel free to let me know your comments or your thoughts down in those comments below. I feel like Quick Trip Pioneers looked really solid in qualifier number 4 with Mock instead of Fiber, which I know sounds so weird to say out loud, but I think when you go to the tape and you watch how the team played, not just in the results, but actually how it looked on the pitch, I don't know, man. It made sense to me. It looked good. Would definitely be intrigued to know what you guys think. But as far as the Pioneers, yeah, they might not be going to major number 2, but they are kind of cheering against their region as long as the Chiefs do not go and win 2 series this weekend. They finish in like the 9th through 11th, or as long as they don't finish in the 9th through 11th. Yeah, so if they do not win 2 series, the Pioneers go. And I don't think there's a tiebreaker either. I think it's if they go to round number 5 and they've won 2 series, and that means that the Chiefs take that number 2 spot for Worlds. If not, if the Chiefs fail to win 2 series, which I think is going to be really tough for them, then it's going to be the Quick Trip Pioneers going to Worlds as well. I think this just goes to show for another reason that we really do need wild cards back. I thought wild cards was a great spectacle. I thought that was a way to really allow for more representation, and it allows for regions to kind of cheer for one another, especially when it came to major number 2 instead of against one another. But I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic for sure. I do feel like, you bring back Worlds, you go to 24, 8 teams already in, you figure out the other 8 through Swiss. Then you have 16 teams to start back over on Swiss. I just feel like that made the most sense. But while we're talking about other regions, I feel like I'd be a little remiss not to talk about Team Mobila, especially as someone who does, do a bit of the storytelling over an SSA on the Made broadcast. In case you haven't heard, or maybe you've been living under a rock, or maybe you forgot, over in SSA, we saw a very big increase as far as in import teams. And not just teams where like there was an import player or two, but like people still playing from EU on like 180 ping, because that was allowed through the rules this year. And now there's been a lot of talks about, a potential 2/3 rule, a 1/3 rule, because you have the Spaniards from Team Mobila, BK Salen and company, who have come through and they have taken the SSA spot for major number 2. Now they do need to have like a grand finals appearance, I believe it is, in order to force a tiebreaker as far as for Worlds, which probably isn't going to happen. So Limitless will still be representing Sub-Saharan Africa when it comes to Worlds. But it doesn't feel good, man. And before people go, out to the streets, out here to the, to the Rocket League, Twitter and Reddit to kind of see what all has been going on, I do feel like there's been a little bit of people trying to villainize this squad. I think this really is a situation where it's more hate the game, don't hate the player, right? They're allowed to travel and play Rocket League. This is a team who wants to try and do that through multiple regions. I think that they are taking a really cool opportunity to allow their hobby, which makes them money, which is Rocket League, to allow them to see the world. And I think that's something that's pretty cool personally. And maybe that's just somebody who has gotten to do a little bit of traveling, through my growth, in my time. I've gotten to do some traveling, I don't think you can necessarily blame those boys for wanting to use Rocket League as their vehicle to be able to allow them to travel and see the world, right? I really do think it's one of those situations where you got to look at Blast and you got to look at, the rules, and you got to go, this ain't right, man. Funny enough, part of the thoughts is needing to have 2/3 residents. I think Team Mobila would have technically still applied by that rule since a couple of them were living in the country. I guess it all kind of depends on what you clarify as far as your residence as well. I do feel like at the end of the day, SSA has kind of earned their spot as far as having a spot for Worlds. And I think that's meant to kind of cater to the SSA talent, not for teams who, couldn't hack it in EU or other regions and then come over and try and take the easy way out. I mean, even look at this split, man. If Carmine Corp just wanted easy wins, they could have gone to SSA and they wouldn't have had to worry about, getting surprise beat in, open qualifiers and stuff like that. Do we really want that to be a potential option for teams in upcoming years? I just don't think that's the case. I think you got to implement a 2/3 rule. And I understand that, you'll have the people who will look at it and go, oh, well, I mean, APAC didn't have a 2/3 rule when they were first kind of adjusting, but I think times were different then. I also think that we're talking about in today's world, there's a reason that we saw people going to SSA as opposed to APAC, because you go to APAC, you're dealing with even more ping. In SSA, you kind of have this situation where because of its proximity to EU, you could realistically play in your own region in EU. Try and go to SSA, which is a region maybe doesn't have quite the same amount of competition. And then as soon as you're done, instead of scrimming the rest of the region to improve them, you just go and play rank 3s in EU, or you scrim EU teams. And like, you're no longer helping develop the region. You're no longer helping like cater, or I shouldn't say cater. Cater's not really the best of words, but to help produce like new homegrown talent. You're not doing any of that. It's against everything that's supposed to be a worldwide spectacle of esports, right? If we're supposed to have a worldwide esports and we have Worlds, and the reason that we took a spot away from EU in the first place was to give it to SSA, then why are we giving it to an EU team anyways? It just does not make sense to me. I don't get it. So hopefully we see that does change in the future. I feel like everyone's talking about it. I know they asked for our feedback as far as like sort of like an exit interview at the end of the broadcast and things. And that was the biggest thing that was brought up. And I think that it will be heard. I think when you look at kind of the acquisition from Blast and all of a sudden people didn't know, what was RLCS going to look like this year, let alone opening it up to the world, which I'm sure was just made by some dude in a suit who looks at the registration and goes, oh, look, registrations are up across the board. Great decision. but they aren't actually like in the trenches seeing what's going on. So I think this is where a lot of people have to use their voice to voice their concern, but make sure they're not going overboard, because if you just tell people they're stupid because they're allowing for open registration, they're not going to listen to you. You know what I mean? But yeah, we'll do RLCS. I think maybe pick'ems next week, whether it be just the first round or maybe we'll do pick'ems all the way through. Because obviously once you get through Swiss, the rest of the pick'ems are relatively easy anyways. I mean, at that point, you only have 9 pick'ems. So keep an eye out for that, obviously. But before we get out of here, I want to talk about VCT. I know it's been a couple weeks since we've had Masters Shanghai. Gen G becomes the first team from Pacific to be able to hoist a trophy, which is amazing. I mean, Karan is that dude. And had been talking that stuff from the beginning. They moved their way through the upper bracket. Yeah, they were pushed the distance by Team Heretics there in the grand final. And I guess you could even say they were kind of tested in the, what was that, the quarterfinal where they played Fnatic. But other than that, they beat most of the teams that they played pretty handedly. I mean, yeah, they 2-0'd 100 Thieves as well, but that was like 2 13-10s. But Gen G, man, they look good. They look really good. And the Keepers of Riot, a couple hours later, ended up winning the League of Legends event that was going on as well, man. So big shout out to Gen G. I feel like for them, got to be nice to get the monkey out the back. I think for the rest of the Pacific, to see a Pacific team be able to walk away. Victor is also really, really cool. That means now we've had a Victor from every region. Well, I mean, other than China with being the new region. So we'll see how long that does take. But also, I think the big thing, I was kind of curious, and this is weird saying for a team that didn't even qualify for top 3, but is it time that we give Boostio his flowers as an IGL in Valorant? Because I feel like we never really mentioned Boostio when we talk about best IGLs in the game. Won the ship last year, came to this 100 Thieves squad, who I think of the teams that made moves was at least like expected to be able to make a lot of difference with their roster changes. And 100 Thieves has looked pretty good. Top 4. I mean, they took down Foot, which I think was a pretty good like international challenge. You took down Paper X as well. You lost to the 2 grand finalists. You know what I mean? And then, like I said, it was 10-13 in that matchup against Gen G. Against Heretics, your first map went the distance. I think, unfortunately, you saw a little bit of that bad momentum going the opposite way in that 13-1. We'll just forget that happened. We'll forget that exists. But I do feel like this 100 Thieves squad is a team that I'm going to be looking forward to, even in stage number 2, which stage number 2 is starting up here, man. We're starting up here in a couple weeks. We're going to get back into watch partying and things like that, too. I think those we're going to have to watch party, though, in Discord. So make sure you're jumping in there if you want to check things out. Let me know who you're looking for in split number 2. Not split number 2. What is this? RLCS? ALGS? Nah, this is VCT, baby, for stage number 2 coming up here in a couple weeks. There is going to be some changes, though. Heading into stage number 2, Demon1 going to be benched for NRG. FNS and Sam going to be making a return over to the NRG squad. And I can't help but ask myself, what is it with all these all-star duelists falling off so hard? I mean, we saw Ye go on this amazing run with Optic. Then he ends up, getting cycled out. Role problems with C9. Struggles with DSG. Runs off to Pacific where Bleed can't win a thing. Now all of a sudden, Demon1 getting benched as well. I don't think it leads for good stability in the scene when you see that some of your best players in the league can literally fall off at like a drop of a dime. I'm not sure what causes that either. Maybe because, it is truly a 5-person team game. And as much as you might have a duelist that is popping off, requires everyone to, get them the openings and things like that. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But I am going to be keeping an eye on the NRG story. Obviously, NRG was expected to make some moves in this season with the acquisition of a couple of the Evil Geniuses players, made some big moves for their roster in the offseason. And they haven't made it to either of the Masters events so far. So you can understand them wanting to apply a little bit of pressure, make some changes. I'll just be honest with y'all, and maybe you can let me know in those comments down below. I just don't think FNS and Sam are the fix, personally. I didn't necessarily even think that Demon1 was the problem on the NRG roster. But I can understand wanting to go with what's familiar and hoping maybe that will cause like a little bit of a honeymoon period where maybe you can bounce back. I don't know. I don't know. Before we get up out of here, though, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the esports scene in the high school level, the scholastic level. Like I talked about that at the top of the episode, was something that really kept me busy up here in PA, working with the two different leagues that are kind of on either side of the state that I think are going to be working together next year. We don't have any official rulings as yet. I've just been told to keep telling people that there's announcements coming. But I believe we're going to be seeing a merger of some sort of the two. But I feel like, Scholastic Esports is really where the esports scene should be really trying to focus more of their effort. You see all this young talent, you see that, and then college, right? Like I feel like creating that pathway to the pro, and having things that really kind of help cater to highly talented like esports players is super, super important. And like I said, it's just great to see young talent. And by the way, while I was out in MidwestFest, man, I got to see the HSEL National Championship. So big congratulations to Swaz, Kazu, Oxytocin, and Haas for being crowned the national champs at MidwestFest. We actually see Swaz and Oxy on the bubble scene coming through some of the weekly tournaments that I cast from time to time over with Stride and Frost. Jumped over to see the kids. I think it was Swaz who had recognized me. I talked to their parents as well, man. It's so cool to see parents so invested. One of my favorite things about Scholastic Esports is seeing the investment from the parents, from the directors, the teachers. I feel like there's still so much more room for improvement there. I think the ceiling is so high. I don't think we've even started to scratch the surface of the potential. And I think it really just comes from seeing that across the board in every state as well. I know I got to do a little bit of a state champions invitational with LOS Scholastic champs. It was the show match for Valorant from the Iowa State team and the Iowa State champions and the Idaho State champions, and even the champions from one state to the other. I think part of it is just because one, if I had to guess, one state has kind of had their program around for a little bit longer, and it was pretty obvious in the results. I think that's something that will probably take a couple of years to see that more of a balance out, from state to state, from program to program. But I do think it's worth the investment. I think the scene is absolutely amazing. I have so much fun working at the Scholastic level. I really look forward to doing more of it with TEC and PIEA up here in Pennsylvania. But I'm also hoping to work with, more of these other leagues, students that, so some of these kids who I knew at HSCL, they asked why I wasn't casting there. I don't know, man. I was trying, bro. But I'd love to cast as much as I can anywhere when it comes to the Scholastic and the collegiate level. It's just a lot of fun. It's really fun to see the improvements from the kids. I feel like you see it much more. You also see the payoff when you get to meet them in person as well. It just seems like it's really worth the time investment. I've had an absolute blast doing it. So, if you're looking for anybody to get excited about Scholastic or collegiate esports and you're listening to this, what up? Hit me up. You know what I'm saying? But then the last thing I just kind of want to talk about real quick, because I did talk about at the top of the episode, I went to MidwestFest. This was my second year going out there. And there was a lot of discourse back and forth, a lot of drama that I saw popping up over on Twitter, because I refuse to call it X. And a lot of people were just like a lot of complaints, man. And look, I get it. I'll be the first one to say that there are some things that were overpromised and underdelivered on from the people putting together MidwestFest. But as someone who did get to go to MidwestFest year number 1, and then went back for year number 2, so many improvements, so many more vendors. We were actually inside versus outside the arena, kind of all the way around, out and around the ring and stuff too. I know that there are some issues with some of the amenities. I know there are some issues as far as with the after party on Saturday. But again, for year number 2, I think you do have to look at the team that ended up putting this thing together. They put on a heck of a show for only having 3 of them trying to run the whole thing. I got to cast the Apex 3v3 tournament out there, as well as the gun game 2v2 that Regiment put on. The tournaments were better. They had the HSEL National Championship on the other side of the basketball courts, because we were on the upstairs there in the Hy-Vee Arena. So on the other side of the arena, in the actual arena, was the other big stage. You had retro games, so many vendors. We also had other tournaments besides those 2 going, or those 3 that were going on as well. Would like to see HSEL bring out their casters next time, because I think that would bring a better show. as well as I was kind of jealous I didn't get to meet a couple of guys I hadn't yet. But overall, man, I think that it was still a really, really good event. For somebody who grew up in the Midwest, spent a lot, my maturing years in the Midwest, realizing that the Midwest, like, we don't have a big con like that. We don't have DreamHacks. We don't have TwitchCon. Like, I don't understand why people are trying to burn those at the stake. No pun intended, since it was partnered with Kick. But I don't know why we're trying to burn anybody at the stake for trying their hand to try and build something big in the Midwest. Were there problems? Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. But I think we can all agree for a second year con, for as big as it was pretty freaking dope. So big ups to Kingston. I know Kingston, Adrian Armour. I know you had a couple of people who were working with you on the whole thing. You never want to take all the credit for yourself. But I thought the event was pretty dope. I hope you'll have me out for future years to do some more casting. Maybe do some of the other events as well, because I honestly had a lot of fun. So, but like we've done in the past, man, I don't want to draw this thing on too long. I already know that we're over the 35-minute mark. I really want to try and keep these things more around that lunchtime sort of podcast for y'all. But keep an eye out, man. Watch parties are going to be back. Like I said, we're going to be doing a watch party actually here shortly after I get offline. Probably after, it's going to be after by the time you guys hear this, because I'm going to edit this probably after the fact. But watch parties are back. ALGS this weekend. We got LANdon next weekend. BCT Stage 2 starting up next week. We're going to be watching some Valorant Challenger Circuit for Americas as well. We got our Casted to Champ streams returning for Season 15 for Rocket League. Already started a little bit. Been having some fun with the homies. Since your boys got some time to do some streams and things, make sure you're watching out for that over on Twitch as well, all right? And then if you're watching this, whether it's over on YouTube, first off, if you're on YouTube, do me a favor, likes, comments, subscribe, share it with your friends, tell somebody to tell somebody to tell somebody about it. We're closing in on that 500 subs, trying to push this thing up to 500, which puts us halfway to that first DAO as well, all right? Make sure you're joining the Discord, keep it active in there, that way you can see when I'm going live for watch parties. We also have other people in the community who are looking for people to play with all the time. I always see the homies in there, whether they're playing Rocket League, whether they're playing Tekken, whether they're playing Overwatch. So jump up in there, say what's up. And I think that's going to do it for you, boy, man. Till we catch y'all back over here for the next one. Don't forget, with everything crazy going on in the world today, be true, be you, be sincere, game hard and love hard. All right, y'all. It's your boy Q. Signing out.